My best friend of 12 years had been sleeping with my wife for at least 5 months. So I cost him his career, got her out of my house the same night I caught them, and made sure every person in our social circle saw exactly what kind of man he was. Before he had the chance to explain himself, everyone told me I went too far. Not one of them has asked how I'm doing since. I want to be clear about something before I get into any of it. I am not a dramatic person. I am 34 years old. I manage commercial real estate development projects across the Front Range of Colorado. My job is essentially identifying problems before they become disasters, containing damage, moving forward. I do not make scenes. My ex-wife Monica used to say that was the problem with me. That I was too steady, too measured, not spontaneous enough, not exciting enough. I heard that a lot in the last year of our marriage. I did not know at the time that she was running the comparison against someone specific while she said it. Monica and I met at a work happy hour downtown 7 years ago. She was a brand manager at a mid-size agency, the kind of person who could hold 4 conversations at once and make every single person feel like the only one in the room. I was the guy who stayed for one drink and usually left early. I don't know what she saw in me then. I used to think she wanted something steady. Now I think she just wanted someone who wouldn't be paying close enough attention. We married after 2 years. Our daughter Zoe came 18 months later. She turned 7 in April. She already has her mother's way of making you feel like the only person who matters when she is talking to you. Rafe was my best man at the wedding. I need you to understand what 12 years actually means. Rafe and I met the first week of freshman year at the University of Colorado. 3rd floor of Hallett Hall, fighting over the last power outlet near the window. He made a joke about my laptop looking like it had survived a house fire. I told him his laptop bag looked like something a divorced CPA would carry. That was it. We were inseparable from that point forward. He was in my corner through every bad girlfriend, every job rejection, every stupid decision I made in my mid-20s. When I proposed to Monica, Rafe drove 2 hours through a snowstorm to be there for the dinner after. He cried during my wedding toast. Real tears. He said he was proud of me and that I deserved every good thing. He is Zoe's godfather. Was. The first crack I noticed was October. I had been down in Colorado Springs for a 2-day site review on a mixed-use development we were finalizing. The review wrapped Thursday evening instead of Friday afternoon. I drove home without telling Monica, figured I'd surprise her, pick Zoe up from her after-school program myself, do something normal. Nice dinner, early night. I pulled into the driveway. And Rafe's truck was already there. That alone was not alarming. Rafe came over, he always had. He knew where we kept the spare key and he used it freely. Which had always been fine, which had always felt like family. I walked in to find them at the kitchen island with glasses of wine. Monica laughing at something he'd just said. When the door opened, there was a half second, maybe less than that, where both of them went still. Then Monica stood up and hugged me, and said she was so glad I was home early. And Rafe slapped me on the shoulder and said, "Man, you scared the hell out of us." Sounded like a break-in. And Zoe came barreling in from the living room and crashed into my legs, and that was that. I let it go. I should not have let it go. But here is what happens when you have a 7-year-old, and a mortgage and a job that takes everything you have. You convince yourself that the things that hurt to think about aren't real. I had no proof of anything. I was tired. I was probably wrong. I talked myself out of it and moved on. Over the next few months, Monica pulled away in ways I couldn't name cleanly. She wasn't cold exactly, she was careful. Like she was doing a careful, deliberate impression of a wife instead of actually being one. She worked later. She started going to the gym at 6 in the morning instead of the evenings. She stopped reaching for my hand during movies. She answered questions a half beat too slowly, like she was running her words through a filter first. Small things. Individually meaningless. Together, a pattern. Rafe showed up less rather than more, which I know sounds backwards. I think he was managing distance to maintain appearances. He texted me regularly. We grabbed lunch in January twice. Surface level present, but without the real depth we used to have. I thought he was going through something, works, stress maybe. I asked him once if everything was all right. He said he was fine, just busy building out the firm's client base. I believed him without question. I was an idiot. What finally opened it up was a small, stupid accident. On a Tuesday morning in February, Monica couldn't find her car keys and was running late. She asked me to grab her winter coat from the hall closet. I pulled it off the hanger, and a small gift bag fell off the shelf above. Burgundy, with tissue paper. From a jewelry store, called Silverline in Cherry Creek, that I had never been to and never taken her to. My first thought, genuinely, was that she'd been planning something for Valentine's Day, and I'd stumbled into the surprise. I opened the bag, a gold bracelet, delicate, with a small engraved charm attached. I turned the charm over. For M always yours, R. I stood in that closet for a long time. Monica appeared at the doorway 2 minutes later, keys in hand, already mentally halfway out the door. She looked at me holding the bag and her face didn't collapse. It moved through stages: recognition, calculation. Something that looked like relief that it was finally out. That speed was the tell. Normal innocence would have been confused. She wasn't confused. I handed her the coat. I said nothing. She said nothing either. After she left and I put Zoe on the school bus, I sat at the kitchen table and made a decision to think like a project manager instead of a husband. The husband wanted to blow up immediately. The project manager understood that emotion without documentation is just noise. I had one piece of evidence. I needed the full picture before I moved. I opened our joint credit card account on my laptop. I hadn't looked carefully at the statements in months. We both contributed, we both trusted. I started 6 months back. Silverline Jewelers, $480 in November. Monica had told me that charge was a retirement gift for a colleague. I hadn't questioned it at the time. Before that, Essex Hotel $310. On a Thursday she'd said was a client event in the Reno district. The Crawford Hotel, $275. On a Saturday I'd taken Zoe up to Fort Collins to see my parents. A dozen charges at a Wash Park restaurant that runs about right for dinner for two. I went through her gym bag next. I was not proud of doing it. I had never done anything like that in 7 years of being with her. Under her workout clothes, in the small zippered interior pocket, was a phone. An older iPhone model, cracked screen, no passcode. Rafe had always used the same password for everything since freshman year, his birthday reversed. I had reset his accounts for him so many times over the years that it was in my memory without effort. The messages were organized under a single contact. Just the letter M. I read 5 months of messages. I didn't read all of them. I read enough. The beginning was careful, almost formal. Like two people testing boundaries slowly. Then it wasn't careful at all. Then it was logistical. Hotel rooms. Lunches when I was at sites. Evenings when I was traveling. One message from 3 weeks earlier from Monica. I'm so tired of this, I want it to just be done already. Rafe's reply. I know, we need to talk about when. Not if, when. I put the phone back exactly where I had found it. I didn't call anyone. I didn't go anywhere. I drove to a gas station 2 miles away, sat in the parking lot and spent an hour planning. That afternoon I photographed the bracelet from every angle. For every data. I had already photographed the credit card statement with the relevant charges highlighted. I printed everything and also uploaded PDFs to a cloud drive I had created that morning. Saved copies to my personal email, my work email, and a third backup account I made on the spot. Then I opened the family iCloud photo album, the shared one Monica and I had set up when Zoe was born, so both sets of grandparents' pictures. It had gotten sloppy over the years. I scrolled back to November. Among the photos Monica had added, synced from her regular phone with the auto upload on, were 3 she had clearly never meant to share. Her and Rafe at a restaurant. Close. The posture was not ambiguous. I screenshotted all 3 and added them to the drive. Then I came home and acted completely normal. Monica came home at 7. I had dinner made. We sat together with Zoe and talked about her school day, and watched half a cartoon before bedtime. Monica fell asleep on the couch, and I covered her with a blanket, and lay in our bed staring at the ceiling until 2 in the morning. The next day I called my attorney. I had used this firm for 3 years on work contracts, and one of the partners there, Estes, also handled family law. I had her cell number. I told her what I had. She said to come in that afternoon. I left her office 2 hours later, with a clear understanding of how adultery affects custody arrangements in Colorado. A strategy for emergency temporary placement. And my documentation folder copied and cataloged for filing. That evening I told Monica I had an overnight site visit to Pueblo the next day. Wouldn't be back until late. She looked up from her laptop. Said okay, said she'd sort out Zoe's dinner. Her voice was even. Her face was even. That evenness was the saddest thing about all of it. After she fell asleep I took Monica's burner phone from her gym bag. I typed one message to Rafe. I kept it simple. Need to see you. Can you come by tomorrow around 7? Brendan's away overnight. I used language she used, short sentences. I knew his number already. It was in my own phone. He answered in under 5 minutes. Of course, I'll bring food. I deleted the sent message, put the phone back, arranged for my neighbor Doris, a retired teacher 2 houses down who had watched Zoe before, to take her for the evening. Confirmed it with a normal reason. Errand that ran long. Doris had no idea. The next day I drove to Pueblo, and came back before noon, kept the appearances intact. At 6:30 I parked 2 blocks away, and walked back to my house through the side yard of the neighbor behind us, who was never home on Thursdays. I let myself in through the back mudroom, set my phone on the shelf above the washer, propped between folded towels, angled toward the kitchen. Started recording. Then I waited. At 7:12 I heard the front door open. Rafe's voice first. Then Monica's laugh. The same one I'd heard in October and told myself meant nothing. I gave them 5 minutes. When I walked into the kitchen, Rafe was at the island, jacket still on, takeout bags between them. He saw me first. His face did not drain. It went completely still, like a machine powering off. Monica turned from the counter and froze. I looked at Rafe. 12 years, I said. That was all. I was not yelling. I wasn't going to yell. The time for big feelings had passed. I was just finished. He stood up off the stool. Brendan. I crossed the room and hit him once. Not open-handed. He went sideways off the stool and caught the counter on the way down. Monica screamed my name. I stepped back. Rafe pushed himself up, hand covering his jaw, and he looked at me with an expression I recognized. Not guilt, not remorse, just the specific look of someone running the numbers on whether they should fight back and deciding against it. Get out of my house, I said. Rafe picked up his jacket off the floor. He looked at Monica once. She didn't say anything to him. He walked to the front door and left. That was his exit from 12 years. He just walked out. Monica stayed. She said we could fix it. She said things had gotten out of hand. She said it didn't mean what I thought it meant. Which is the most insulting thing a person can say. When you are holding 5 months of evidence in your hand. I went to the bedroom, pulled 2 suitcases from the top shelf of the closet, and set them in the center of the hallway. You have 1 hour, I told her. She said she wasn't going anywhere. She said this was her house too. She said I was being punishing and cold. And that this was exactly the problem with me. That I shut down instead of talking. I pulled out my phone. Showed her the recording, still running. Pulled up the cloud drive. Printed credit card statement. Then I put my phone back in my pocket and waited. 42 minutes later she dragged 2 suitcases and a duffel bag to the door. She turned at the threshold and said I would regret this. I held the door open. When she was gone, I sat in Zoe's bedroom for a while. Just sat in the small reading chair by the window, where I used to read to her before bed, looking at the plastic glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that we'd put up together when she was 4. Then I got up. I opened the group message I shared with 6 of our closest mutual friends. 2 couples and 2 singles, the core of our social circle for the last 4 years. I sent them 4 things without commentary. The photo of the bracelet and the engraving. The highlighted credit card statement. The screenshots of the messages from the burner phone with Rafe's name visible at the top. And the photos from the iCloud album. Then 1 line. I wanted to hear this from me before you heard it from someone else. 11 calls in the next hour, I answered none. The next morning I submitted a formal complaint to the Colorado Division of Securities, which licenses and oversees financial advisors in the state. I outlined the documented pattern of unauthorized use of jointly held marital funds in connection with the misconduct, referenced the specific charges and dates, and attached copies of everything. Financial advisory licensure comes with ethics requirements. A formal complaint triggers an open investigation, which is a matter of public record. I also forwarded the full documentation to Harding, Rafe's business partner, whose email address I had from a referral introduction 2 years back. I wrote 1 paragraph. I believe you should be aware of the following, as it may affect your firm's exposure and standing. Attach the same folder. Harding called me the following morning. He was measured, professional. He said he appreciated me reaching out directly. He said the matter would be handled internally. 3 days later, Rafe's name was removed from the firm's website. Estes filed for emergency temporary custody. That Monday on grounds of marital misconduct, affecting the stability of the household. The documentation was specific. Hotel charges on dates I was away. The presence of the third party inside the marital home during Zoe's regular hours. The pattern of deception maintained over 5 months. The court granted temporary primary placement to me pending the full hearing. Monica's attorney argued the emergency filing was excessive. Our documentation made the argument short-lived. The divorce finalized in 4 months. Colorado moves fast when both parties have attorneys, and the evidence is clean. Primary custody went to me. Monica received alternating weekends for the first 6 months, with a family services coordinator present for the first 2 months of those visits. She retained her share of equity in the house, which I bought out at current market value. So Zoe didn't have to leave her school, or her neighborhood or her glow-in-the-dark stars. The adultery didn't affect asset division under Colorado law, but it affected the judge's view of credibility across the board, and Monica's decision to leave the home voluntarily on the night of the confrontation didn't help her custody argument. Harding confirmed to me, off the record and briefly, that the internal review had found additional conduct issues that my formal complaint had given the ethics committee standing to formally address. Rafe's license was placed under an 18-month supervisory order, meaning he could not independently manage client accounts. For someone whose entire business model was built on direct client relationships, it was effectively the end. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he relocated to Phoenix sometime in early spring. I did not ask for details. My mother called me about a month after everything. She asked if I was handling it. I told her I was doing fine. She said she was worried I was shutting down instead of processing it. I told her I wasn't shutting down. I was just done with it, and those were different things. I think she understood. I think most people, if they're being honest, can understand that some situations don't need more processing. They just need to be over. I was promoted in June. Regional Project Director, overseeing development planning across 3 counties. More responsibility, more travel, more of what I'm actually good at. My company provided relocation support as part of the package, and I used it to refinance the house at a better rate. After buying out Monica's equity, Zoe kept her room, kept her school, kept her life as intact as I could keep it. In August, I started spending time with a woman named Faye, a structural engineer who worked for the city's infrastructure department. She had her own version of this story. Different details, same essential shape. We understood things about each other that didn't require long explanations. We went slowly. She was patient and clear-eyed. And she made Zoe laugh during our second time all together. And that was all I needed to see. On a Friday evening in October, I took Zoe to her school's fall science fair. She had built a water filtration model with a 2-liter bottle, and layers of gravel and sand and cotton. And it actually worked. Poured murky water in the top and clean water came out the bottom. Second place ribbon. She was furious about second place for about 3 minutes. And then decided, second was still excellent. And accepted the ribbon with full dignity. We were standing near the display tables with her ribbon when I saw Monica across the gymnasium. She was alone. She looked thin in a way she hadn't before, and there were shadows under her eyes that weren't from the lighting. She was wearing her coat stills, like she'd arrived late, and hadn't quite settled. She caught my eye from across the room and I saw her make the decision to walk toward us. Daddy, Zoe tugged my sleeve. Come look at this one. The volcano is actually erupting. Real smoke, come on. I looked back toward Monica. She had stopped about halfway across the gym. Just standing there, watching me with Zoe, watching in the life she had walked out of continuing without her. I gave her a single nod. Nothing more than acknowledgement. Nothing that would confuse Zoe if she turned around and saw. Then Zoe pulled my arm again. And I turned and followed her to the volcano. Behind me I heard Monica's footsteps move away toward the exit. I did not look back. Zoe won me over completely with the volcano. She gave the other kids' project a full and serious critique, concluded that the smoke was very impressive, but the structure lacked stability and would not survive an actual earthquake, and then suggested we go find the good cookies before the parents ate them all. I followed her across the gymnasium with her second place ribbon in my hand, thinking that she is going to be completely fine. I have not spoken to Rafe since the night I told him to get out of my house. I have not spoken to Monica outside of attorney correspondence and the brief exchanges required for custody handoffs. My mother and I are closer now than we have been in years. Faye and I are still going slowly, which feels exactly right. There is a version of this story where I am the villain. The man who went nuclear, who destroyed 2 people's livelihoods, who couldn't find it in himself to try to save a 7-year marriage. I have heard that version from a few people who used to be in our circle. What none of those people mention is the 5 months. The hotels, the burner phone. The bracelet engraved with initials that were not mine. The message that said when, not if. The deliberate to push me out and slide into the space I left. I did not blow up my marriage. I cleaned up the wreckage of what they had already decided for me. Zoe asked me, driving home from the science fair with her ribbon on her lap, whether I ever got sad anymore. Sometimes, I told her. What about? I thought about it honestly for a moment. The way she deserves. Wasted time, I said, but not lately. She nodded like that made complete sense to her and then told me she had decided. She wanted to be a water engineer when she grew up because clean water was important. And also she liked the idea of fixing things that were broken. I told her that sounded exactly right. Some things, once broken, cannot be put back together. That is not a tragedy. That is just how materials work. You assess the damage, you document what you find. You decide what is worth salvaging and what needs to be cleared. Then you build something better on ground that is actually solid. That is all I did. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, please like and share. It helps more than you know. We'll see you next time.